there's something in the skies above us, and it might not be what you think, because you're probably thinking UFOs, right? Well, today's episode explores something a little stranger that's really going to make you think. In 2017, a Cindy Voivoda and her husband had attended a paranormal gathering on Mackinac Island, located in the state of Michigan. The event included a Halloween costume party. Now, Cindy, who was a lifelong UFO fan, decided to dress up as an alien along with her husband. Her husband decided to go as Giorgio Tsoukalos of Ancient Aliens fame. "I've always wanted to see a UFO," she would later write. "I imagined a shiny, silver disc-shaped craft, but that was the farthest thing from what I actually saw when I had my first UFO sighting." As the party drew to a close around midnight, Cindy and her husband had decided to relax a bit among the rows of Adirondack chairs out on the lawn in front of the Mission Point Hotel. A meteor shower was supposed to happen that very evening, and both of them hoped to catch a glimpse of a shooting star, or maybe even two. But what they saw was far stranger. Both of them simultaneously announced that they had spotted something up above. Cindy described it as a massive object taking up 1/3 of the sky and traveling from one horizon to the other, straight across the sky. However, it was not your traditional flying saucer, because Cindy went on to say that she saw what I can only describe as an organic, orange-colored jellyfish-like creature with tentacles. I say organic because I believe it was not a spaceship, but a living being. After their shared sighting, Cindy and her husband had compared notes, so to speak. "I was shocked to hear that what he saw was completely different," she said. He described the creature as a thunderbird, or massive Native American bird. He said it was dark in color and could see its wings flapping. Although the size was the same, the description itself was very different than mine. But just what did Cindy and her husband see? It certainly didn't seem like a structured craft. Was something playing with their minds, making Cindy see one thing and making her husband see something else entirely? That's one important takeaway from Cindy's story, regardless of which of them was more accurate. The UFO that they witnessed seemed more organic than any type of machine. I mean, most folks think that the UFO topic is settled. Flying saucers are extraterrestrial vehicles from outer space. But in reality, this idea is just one of dozens of alternate hypotheses that researchers have put forth to explain UFOs. One of the less popular ideas, but no less fascinating, argues that UFOs are actually atmospheric life forms living among the clouds. Now, interestingly, the idea of atmospheric life forms seem to have gained popularity in recent years. In fact, some films have recently used the idea of sky creatures to great effect. Spoiler alert for Jordan Peele's 2022 horror film Nope. The UFO isn't a vehicle, but rather a living creature, feasting on livestock and human beings. Now, many critics applauded Jordan Peele's originality. What they didn't realize is that the idea is actually quite old. The November 1913 issue of the Strand magazine actually featured a submission written by Sherlock Holmes creator Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. The science fiction story was entitled The Horror of the Heights and portrayed monsters high in Earth's atmosphere that attacked and killed pilots. Now, the idea isn't purely fictional, however. A number of sightings like Cindy's support the possibility, and these stretch back to the earliest days of the UFO era. In fact, an argument could even be made that the very first flying saucer sighting actually involved, well, not extraterrestrial craft, but these weird Lovecraftian sky beasts, or so as we call them. But on June 24th, 1947, a Kenneth Arnold went down in history for inadvertently coining the term flying saucer. Above Mount Rainier in Washington state, he observed what he described as 9 craft flying all in formation, high up in the air. He said that they flew erratic, like a saucer if you skip it across the water. His words spread and changed through the media, becoming the term flying saucer. However, Arnold was always a bit circumspect regarding exactly what these objects represented. Besides the possibility of vehicles, he entertained a number of theories throughout his life, including the idea that they might be somehow the connection between the living and the dead. Now, Kenneth Arnold expressed one of his wilder ideas in a 1959 interview with a reporter from the Denver Post. Arnold said that he was starting to suspect that UFOs were actually living organisms just in the atmosphere, that they have the power to change their density and appearance. In fact, I believe this idea would later be revisited numerous times, including Lazar, and even at the time of this recording, one of Joe Rogan's latest interviews with a man by the name of Bill Ottman, who runs the company Minds.com, even had a very brief conversation in a 3-hour podcast about ships and UFOs could be potentially what they refer to as post-biological. But I don't want to get off on a tangent. That is a whole other thing we can get into for another episode. Let's roll back to Kenneth Arnold for a second, as he was expressing the possibility once entertained by no less than the United States government. In the aftermath of his 1947 sighting, the U.S. Air Force actually organized Project Sign to investigate the UFO problem. Now, the study was approached by a Pennsylvanian researcher, John Philip Besser, who suggested that flying saucers were actually living intelligences composed of a highly attenuated substance, capable of materialization and dematerialization, whose propellant is a form of telekinetic energy. Talk about word salad. As evidence for his claims, Besser pointed to anomalous falls from the sky, reported for hundreds of years. Many of these include falls of blood, meat, and personal effects, as in the 2022 film Nope. As disturbing as that sounds, could these be leftovers from an atmospheric life form dining on human beings? Maybe. Speculation is all fine and good, but what about actual sightings? I mean, that's why we're here. Well, ever since Kenneth Arnold's encounter, UFOs appearing more like life forms than vehicles have haunted our very skies. The one name most closely associated with the idea of atmospheric life forms is New Zealand author Trevor James Constable. Now, Constable championed this possibility as an explanation for UFOs and charmingly called these monsters critters. Constable even used infrared film to capture images of what he claimed were these critters. And no, I'm not talking about the 80s movie. Constable believed that these photographs showed that his critters were unicellular life forms, like amoebas. They existed in a plasma state, neither solid, liquid, nor gas, and were primarily composed of calcium and fluids. While normally hidden from human eyes, in the infrared range of the electromagnetic spectrum, from time to time, they occasionally take on a more visible appearance, glowing red or orange, and are mistaken for extraterrestrial craft. Their ability to slip into the infrared spectrum to Constable explained how UFOs manage to suddenly disappear and reappear. Now, one of the cases that Constable cited occurred to American aviation enthusiast a Don Wood Jr. Now, one afternoon in 1925, Wood was flying with 4 others when they landed on the Mesa in Nevada. Wood said this: "While walking about the top of this place, we noticed something coming in for a landing. It was roughly 8 feet across and was round and flat like a saucer. The undersides were a reddish color. It skidded to a stop about 30 feet away. This next you won't believe, and I don't care, but it's the truth. We walked up to the thing, and it was like some animal like we never saw before. It was hurt, and as it breathed, the top would rise and fall, making a half-foot hole all around it like a clam opening and closing. Quite a hunk had been chewed out of one side of this rim, and a sort of metal-looking froth issued. When it saw us, it breathed frantically and rose up only a few inches, only to fall back to earth again. It was moist and glistened on the top side. We could see no eyes or legs. After a 20-minute rest, it started pulsating once more. We stayed 10 feet away, and so help me, the thing grew as bright as all could get out, except where it was hurt. It had a mica-like shell body. It tried to rise up again, but sank back again. Then we saw a large round shadow fall on us. We looked up and ran. Coming in was a much larger animal, 30 feet across. It paid no attention to us, but settled itself over the small one. 4 sucker-like tongues settled on the little one, and the big one got so dazzling bright, you could not look at it. Both rose straight up and were out of sight in a second. They must have been traveling 1,000 miles an hour to get so high so fast. When we walked over there was an awful stench, and the frothy stuff the little one had bled looked like fine aluminum wire. There was more frothy, wiry stuff in a 30-foot circle where the big one had breathed. This stuff finally melted in the sun and we took off. So help me, this was an animal. I have never told this before as we knew no one would believe us. I only write now because this animal would be one big 30-foot light if seen at night. I don't expect belief, but I simply had to write. Dawn Wood's story is terrifying because it implies an entire ecosystem unfolding invisibly directly above our heads. Sometimes, trace evidence suggests the possibility of atmospheric life forms. For example, on September 26, 1950, a pair of law enforcement officers in Philadelphia had spotted something strange in the sky. Now, they watched as the object lowered itself into a nearby field. After calling for backup, the policemen went to investigate the landing site. Instead of a craft, they found a bizarre 6-foot-long mass. It seemed to be some sort of gelatinous substance and evaporated within 30 minutes, just as in Dawn Wood's case from 1925. Another noteworthy case unfolded in Frisco, Texas in 1979. On the evening of August 10th, a resident watched a peculiar light descend into the vicinity of a neighbor's house. Now, the very next day, the homeowner, a Miss Sybil Christian, found a trio of purple blobs near the site. After the first evaporated in the sunshine, the other two were collected and sent away for analysis. It was determined to be industrial waste. Okay. Though the witnesses remained steadfast that it must be something far stranger. As for what happened to those mysterious samples, there's legend that they were reverse engineered and formed the basis for the cheese used at every Sbarro franchise. Now, human beings have lost touch with our surroundings. Many of us live in the safety of cities, where we all have pushed all of nature's threats far from the safety of our homes. What if we're simply bottom feeders clinging to the floor of a vast atmospheric ocean above our heads? That idea alone should terrify you. But more importantly, I want to know what you guys think. So be sure to please let me know what you think down in the comments below. I would love to hear from all of you. And if you guys enjoyed today's episode, be sure to go ahead and smack that like and subscribe button for content just like this. And as always, I love you all. Keep an open mind, and I'll see you guys in the very next episode.